English learners, welcome. You're listening to The Deep Dive.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're really zeroing in on something crucial, how you can sound, well, more polished, more confident when you speak English.
Yeah, this is so important, whether it's for work, maybe meetings, presentations, or honestly, even just everyday chats. How you deliver your message counts.
It really does. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to pull out practical, easy-to-use strategies, things you can literally start using today to level up your spoken English.
Exactly. We've sifted through quite a bit of material to find what genuinely works, what's most effective.
And we want you to remember this stuff. So we've put together a free PDF guide. It sums up the main points, has some questions to check your understanding, even a few grammar bits. The link's right there in the description.
Oh, and we'll also be pointing out some useful intermediate vocabulary as we go. We'll collect those towards the end.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So first things first, something foundational, but maybe sometimes overlooked. Proper greetings.
Ah, yes. Seems basic, right? But how you start really does set the tone.
Completely.
I mean, imagine walking into a professional setting and just saying, hey, or what's up?
Yeah, a bit too casual sometimes.
Compare that to a clear good morning or good afternoon, or even just, hello, how are you today? It immediately signals something different, more professional polish.
It really does. And building on that, using titles and last names.
Like, good morning, Mr. Smith, or Mrs. Jones.
Exactly. At least initially. It just shows a level of respect and, well, professionalism.
Right, until they invite you to be more casual.
Precisely. You sort of follow their lead on formality as you build that rapport, but starting out right is key.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So strategy one, nail those greetings. What's next? Something I think many of us could probably work on, being concise, avoiding wordiness.
Yes, this is a big one. Sometimes there's this idea that longer, complex sentences sound smarter, perhaps.
Right, like you're trying to impress.
But actually, clear, direct communication often sounds much more confident. It cuts through the noise.
And it's easier for the listener too, surely.
Absolutely. Less work for them to understand your point. You respect their time, their focus. When you're direct, the message just lands better.
Okay, so give us some examples. How do we cut the clutter?
Well, we found some great before and afters, like instead of saying, in the event that it rains, we will postpone the meeting.
Okay, sounds a bit formal.
Right. You just say, if it rains, we will postpone the meeting. Same meaning, fewer words, much clearer.
Much better. Got another.
Sure. How about, for the purpose of improving our customer service, we are launching a new training program.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah, just trim it down to improve our customer service, we are launching a new training program. Straight to the point.
Love it. One more.
Let's do one more.
Yeah,
Instead of, due to the fact that she was late, the meeting started without her.
which sounds a bit roundabout.
Exactly. Just say, because she was late, the meeting started without her. It's stronger, more direct. Really, less is more here. Great speakers are often very concise.
That's a powerful takeaway. Less cognitive load for the listener, as you said, which makes you sound clearer and more confident. Okay, so that naturally leads us to the next point, right? Getting rid of.
Filler words.
Ah, yes.
The ums and uhs.
And the likes, the you-knows, the kindas, we all use them sometimes, but they can really undermine your message, make you sound hesitant, maybe unsure.
And the tricky part is you often don't even realize you're doing it.
Exactly. Self-awareness is key here. Those little verbal tics, they can signal a lack of confidence, even if that's not intended.
So instead of saying, I kind of think this idea might work.
Try something more direct, like, I believe this idea will work.
Yeah.
See the difference?
Big difference. Much more conviction.
And here's a practical tip.
Yeah?
Instead of filling a gap with, just pause, take a breath. Silence. Can that work?
Absolutely. A deliberate pause can actually make you sound more thoughtful, more in control than stumbling over a filler word. It gives you a moment to gather your thoughts.
Okay, I like that pausing instead of umming.
Hmm.
Now, what about other extra words? Things like basically, technically, actually.
Ah, yes, those side particles. Often, and it's quite interesting, they don't really add much substance.
Really? Give me an example.
Okay, think about. Basically, we need to finish the report by Friday.
Right.
Does the basically change the core message? Not really. You could just say, we need to finish the report by Friday.
Huh. It's true. It just adds padding.
Exactly. Stripping away those unnecessary words lets your main point shine through. Clean, uncluttered speech sounds more authoritative, more confident.
Right. Okay, so be concise. Cut the fillers. Now let's talk about the actual words we choose, using stronger, more assertive words.
Yes, this is crucial. Word choice significantly shapes perception. It can convey confidence or, conversely, uncertainty.
So subtle shifts can make a big difference.
Definitely. Compare, I think this is a good idea, with, I believe this is a great idea.
And the second one feels much stronger, more conviction.
Precisely. Or think about passive versus active. I was given an opportunity.
Right.
Versus I seized the opportunity. Which one sounds more proactive, more confident?
The second one, seized. It shows initiative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another common one, suggesting ideas. Instead of a tentative, maybe we could try this approach.
Which sounds a bit weak.
Try. Let's move forward with this approach. It's decisive. It shows leadership.
Okay, good one. What about asking questions?
Instead of ending an explanation with, does that make sense? Which can almost sound like you doubt your own clarity.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Try something like, let me know if you have any questions.
It puts the onus on them, but confidently invites discussion.
That's much better. Projects confidence in your explanation.
And one last one here, finishing up. Instead of, I hope this helps, which is fine, but a bit passive, try. I'm confident this will help. It shows assurance, reliability. So it's not about being pushy or aggressive.
Not at all. It's about clarity, certainty, believing in what you're saying and choosing words that reflect that.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of belief in what you're saying, that brings us to removing unnecessary disclaimers.
Ah, yes. Those little phrases we sometimes stick on the front of our statements that, well, weaken them before we even start.
Like apologizing for having an idea.
Kind of. Phrases like, this might sound silly, but, or, you've probably already thought of this, but.
I've definitely used those. You feel like you need to soften it.
But it unintentionally undermines your point. Instead of say, I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but maybe we could try.
Just say.
I suggest we try. Own it. Be direct.
Okay, and what about asking questions? Like prefacing with, this may be a dumb question, but...
There are no dumb questions, right? Just ask directly. Can you clarify this for me? It sounds much more self-assured.
So basically, trust your thoughts. If you have a suggestion, suggest it. If you have a question, ask it. Don't apologize for contributing.
Exactly. Ditch the disclaimers. It helps people take your ideas more seriously because you sound like you take them seriously.
Right. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about something really important in any interaction, especially professional ones. Giving feedback.
Oh, absolutely. Feedback is vital for growth, but how you deliver it, that's critical.
It can make all the difference between someone being receptive or getting defensive, right?
Totally. Harsh or vague feedback just doesn't work well. So instead of something blunt like, your work isn't good.
Ouch. Not helpful.
Not helpful at all. Try framing it constructively. I think this could be improved by, or have you considered adding, offer a path forward.
Okay. And instead of pointing out errors like, you did this wrong.
Which can feel accusatory. Maybe try something collaborative. I have a suggestion that might make this even better. Or let's look at how we could approach this part differently. Focus on improvement, not just the mistake.
And is there a good structure for feedback? Like how to start?
A really effective approach is often the sandwich method, or at least starting positively. Acknowledge what is working first.
So, like, the overall structure of this report is really clear and well organized.
Exactly. Start there. Then you can gently introduce the area for improvement. One thought I had was perhaps adding a bit more detail in the analysis section.
Ah, so you balance the positive with the constructive suggestion. Makes it easier to hear.
Much easier. The aim should always be to encourage and help the person grow, not to criticize or discourage. Make it palatable, you could say.
Palatable feedback. I like that. Okay, and this idea of being clear and constructive also applies to asking questions, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. How you phrase your questions can say a lot about your professionalism and how engaged you are.
Right. A vague question can sometimes make it seem like you weren't really listening or you're unprepared.
Think about the difference. Instead of just, I don't get it.
Which sounds a bit abrupt.
Try something more polished, like, excuse me, may I ask a question about that? Or could you elaborate on that point?
Much more professional. What about asking for repetition? Instead of, can you explain that again?
Maybe try. I was wondering if you could clarify the part about, or could you walk me through that one more time? It shows you're trying to understand specifics.
And instead of a blunt, what do you mean?
A better option is often, could you elaborate on that? Or could you provide an example? It invites more detail in a polite way.
So asking thoughtful, well-structured questions shows you're paying attention, thinking critically.
Mm-hmm.
It boosts your professional image.
Definitely. And of course, after you ask, you need to actively listen to the answer. That's a whole other skill, but crucial.
Very true. Okay, we've covered a lot. Greetings, conciseness, fillers, strong words, disclaimers, feedback, questions. What about ending conversations?
Ah, the closing. Yes, super important. How you end things leaves a lasting impression.
You don't want to just cut it off abruptly, right? It's like, okay, bye.
Exactly. Especially in more formal or professional contexts, consider using a polite closing remark.
Such a
Things like, "Thank you for your time today. I found this very helpful." Or, "I appreciate you sharing your insights on this." Or even, "It was a pleasure speaking with you."
nice. It just feels more complete, more respectful.
It does. And another key part of closing, especially after meetings, is clarifying next steps.
Right. Don't leave things hanging. Instead of a vague, okay, I'll follow up.
Be specific.
Hmm,
Okay, so the next step is I will send you that summary by end of day Friday. Clarity avoids confusion, shows responsibility.
good point. And what about keeping the door open for future contact?
Yeah, instead of just talk later, which is fine for friends, maybe try. Please feel free to reach out if anything else comes up, or don't hesitate to contact me if you have further questions.
It sounds more professional and inviting.
Exactly. So, a polite closing, clear next steps, and an invitation for future contact. It all adds up to a really polished professional finish.
Excellent. That really rounds out the strategies nicely. And speaking of rounding things out, that brings us to the vocabulary section you mentioned earlier.
That's right. Throughout this discussion, we've naturally used some intermediate level words that are really useful for this topic of sounding more professional. Let's quickly highlight a few.
Okay, let's do it.
So, we talked a lot about being concise. Remember, that just means being clear and using few words, getting straight to the point.
Right. Concise. Got it.
We also mentioned being assertive. That's about stating your ideas confidently, but without being aggressive. Finding that balance.
Assertive. Okay.
When giving feedback, we use the word palatable, making feedback easier to accept, more agreeable.
Palatable feedback. Yeah.
We touched on being decisive, making clear, firm decisions, like saying, let's move forward with this approach.
Decisive. Important for confidence.
And related to feedback again, making sure it's constructive, meaning it's helpful, it offers suggestions for improvement, not just criticism.
Constructive. Always aim for that.
And finally, the overall impression we're often aiming for is sounding authoritative, speaking with confidence, knowledge, and conviction.
Authoritative. Okay. So concise, assertive, palatable, decisive, constructive, and authoritative. Great words to add to your toolkit.
Definitely. Try to notice them, maybe practice using them yourself. They can really elevate your communication.
Fantastic advice. So just to quickly wrap up our deep dive today, we've really unpacked a toolbox full of practical strategies.
Yeah, things you can use right away.
From those initial greetings, being concise, ditching fillers and disclaimers, choosing strong words, giving good feedback, asking smart questions, and finishing strong.
It's often the small tweaks that make the biggest difference cumulatively.
Absolutely. And layering on top of that, expanding your vocabulary with terms like the ones we just discussed, concise, assertive, and so on adds another level of polish.
It all works together.
And remember, if you want a recap and some practice, grab that free PDF guide. The link's in the description. It pulls everything together.
Definitely check that out.
And if you found this useful, please do follow or subscribe so you catch our next deep dive. We'd also love it if you could leave a rating or review. It really helps others find the show.
Absolutely. And remember, improving your spoken English, sounding more confident, it's a journey. It takes practice.
Keep practicing, keep listening, keep learning.
And keep improving. Thanks for joining us.